Dynasty Decisions, episode number 85, 15 away from 100 episodes of Dynasty Decisions. You guys know what we're doing around here. We're breaking down your teams, your questions, your trades, your rookie picks, your rebuilding / contending. All that stuff will be covered in today's video. We're going to be looking at 8 teams in this video, I believe all of which are Mother Flocker or Flocker members over on Flock Fantasy. Of course, use the promo code FSE to get priority submissions to Dynasty Decisions episodes. But before we get into it, Danny, how you doing?
Doing well. And yeah, I mean, you guys have been clamoring for another episode, so we had to deliver. And of course, as you guys know, going through these 8 Dynasty teams, trying to help you guys out. But with that being said, let's get right into the first team. But before we do that, let's set the intro.
All right, so let's get it kicked off with Mark's team here. 12-team start 11, so deep starting roster, super flex format. Josh Allen, Bryce Young, and Sam Howell are his top guys. Kenneth Walker, CEH, Roschon Johnson is his main running backs. Wide receivers, absolutely loaded. Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave, Christian Watson, Jordan Addison, Josh Downs, and company there. And then Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, and Irv Smith makes up his tight end core with a couple extra firsts in the bank as well. He somehow says that this was the startup and he didn't actually just like build this team over a couple of years. I have no idea how you managed to get Josh Allen, Bryce Young, Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave, and Kyle Pitts because they're all like top 25 assets for me in startup leagues. But you definitely did a great job here. He said he's punted running back pretty hard in this draft, and he probably would have punted it harder had Kenneth Walker not fallen to the 7th round, which is ridiculous. I get it. They added Zach Charbonnet, but he should not be on the board in the 7th round. He said looking for some guidance, what to do to make this team a contender by next season. My thoughts on this team would be that I would potentially go shopping. Like I'm not usually in the mindset that you want to like go shopping and push your chips all in, but having 3 firsts next year and your second rounder obviously as well makes it so that, you know, if there's a team in your league that doesn't like their team coming out of the startup, and there usually is 1 or 2 in every single league that you're going to be in, and they have Kirk Cousins and Josh Jacobs on their roster, and you can send your first, which you'd project to be late if you're going all in, and your second for Josh Jacobs and Kirk Cousins, like I wouldn't be opposed to doing something like that because realistically, you're like an RB1 and a productive quarterback away from probably being a top 3 team in your league. You have a great tight end. You have, obviously a loaded wide receiver core, 6 point per passing touchdown. Josh Allen's going to be huge as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I got to turn the mic volume down. My bad.
I don't know what's up with your mic that it changes in volume and never does that.
No clue. Yeah, I agree with everything you guys basically said there. I am honestly flabbergasted that you're able to walk out of a startup with this level of talent accumulated along with the 3 first-round picks. Of course, like Corey said, if the opportunity arises and you can go and purchase a running back, you can go and purchase a quarterback, I would look into that. But hypothetically, if you were able to get this amount of talent accumulated, I'm assuming a lot of your Nick Chubb types, a lot of your, Austin Eckler types, a lot of your older running backs, maybe your Mike Evans types, DeAndre. Like, I don't know what the draft board looks like, but I'm pretty confident in saying if Walker was available in the 7th, you probably got a lot of value on guys like Kyle Pitts, guys like him, guys like, Christian Watson that were falling in your draft. So I don't know how plausible it would be for you to potentially purchase a Nick Chubb for a single first if the guy in your league took him in the 3rd round, right? So ultimately here, obviously, if the opportunity arises and you can buy some, really good value type of production pieces, go for it. But if you have to wait and then by 2024, you're on the clock, either somebody wants to offer you for your pick, somebody wants to potentially, make a move at one of those mid-tier, because I don't think your pick's not going to be early. I don't know what the other 2 picks in terms of their trajectory look like, but your pick alone is at minimum going to be mid. Possibly late if, something develops, hypothetically, if Jerick McKinnon got hurt and CH got a workload, or if Roschon Johnson wants the workload, your team's got pathing to be a late first-round pick. So in your spot, like I kind of said, try to buy the talent. If you can't, no worries. By next year's draft, gauge some offers if somebody's willing to give you it then. Or like we kind of mentioned, we know this 2024 draft class is going to be rich in running back talent. If you add, hypothetically, you have those 3 first-round picks, a quarterback that emerges, because again, I doubt you're going to get an early pick, and one of those Raheem Sanders, Donovan Edwards, Travion Henderson types next year, I think at minimum by next year, if you're not competing basically by next year, I would be heavily shocked is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, and Bryce Young and Sam Howell could both be very productive quarterbacks for you as well. If Sam Howell takes a step this year, he might be a productive QB3 for you. Like you said, you can kind of just spend your picks on running backs in next year's class. And that's kind of what we always preach, right? We want our running backs on rookie contracts while the rest of our team is built as a solid foundation. That's pretty much exactly what you've done here. So I honestly don't think we need to spend much more time on your team because,
Agreed.
I mean, you say, what should I do to make this team a contender by next season? Realistically, you could probably do nothing
Sit.
and just kind of let yourself get the 107 next year and be the 6th seed and get bounced in the first round or whatever. And then you're going to have a mid pick that you can pick a Travion Henderson or somebody like that. And then hopefully those other picks that you have end up being early so you can get yourself another stud running back, another stud wide receiver, maybe another stud quarterback or something like that. So we can probably move on to the next team, which is from Doc. And I think it's kind of hilarious because I think this is what the 4th or 5th team that we've covered from this league because both of us are in this league. So me and you have covered our own teams on this channel in this league.
AJ,
we also covered
Flat.
AJ's team and Flet's team. So we're covering Doc's team of the Tone Setter League. This is with our Tone Setter Patreon tier from last year that we did this startup. And Doc, I believe, won the league last year.
Co-champion. Him and AJ.
So him and AJ, yeah, they had a week 17, scuffle with the Bills-Bengals game. So they ended up splitting the pot. But his team, you guys can see it on the screen here, 12 team, start 10, Superflex League, Dak Prescott, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo as his main quarterbacks, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, Rashad Penny, Jerick McKinnon as the main running backs, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Gabe Davis, Sky Moore, Darnell Mooney, etc. there. Travis Kelce as his main tight end. This is the person that put an end to my 13-1 season last year because I got hit with the Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Travis Kelce, Jerick McKinnon stack, and they destroyed me in the first round of the playoffs. So yes, I have a little bit of animosity to this team. But it's a pretty well-built contender. Obviously, you can tell it's a dead giveaway when you have Derrick Henry and Tony Pollard and those guys on your roster. You're going to be contending with this team. He's going to be trying to run it back and win again. Couple trades that he made here that we could talk about. 2025 first, he sent away in exchange for some running back depth, Tajay Spears, Roschon Johnson, Sam Laporta, and Sky Moore. I'm not exactly sure who he made that trade with. I don't actually remember. But I mean, his team is pretty lacking on depth, so I kind of understand the move. What are your thoughts on this one? Do you think you got good value? I mean, you got a couple mid to late seconds and Sky Moore. I think that's not terrible value there.
Yeah, I mean, in his spot, because he didn't have any 2023 or 2024 capital, he was kind of in a bind, right? So he kind of realized, like, hey, I got this nucleus to try to win now, but I don't have the depth that I need. So although on face value, I would prefer having the buying power with the 2025 first in season, I do understand the move because, like we kind of said, if you already know you're going to be running it back, you're already in the rookie draft, you kind of see what's materializing around you, and you get Tajay Spears, who's your handcuff to Derrick Henry, Roschon Johnson, who has an opportunity to emerge in an ambiguous backfield, Sam Laporta, who has the opportunity to be the tight end one for the Lions, along with Sky Moore, who potentially, again, we're not high on Kadarius Toney, maybe gets a workload there. Like, on face value, like I said, I would prefer the 25 first, but I see multiple paths towards payoff for what you're trying to accomplish in terms of trying to going back to back. And that's pretty much similar with the second deal. You trade away 2 third-round picks, end up getting the 305 and the 310. Face value, I probably would have rather the thirds in 2024 and 2025. But if Tillman or Deuce Vaughn ever work into your lineup this year, that means more to you from a production standpoint than the liquidity of the 2024 and 2025 third. So I understand the moves. Also, a little funny here. He says, aside from Danny's advice of trade me CeeDee Lamb, because like we kind of mentioned, we are both actually in this league and both trying to compete. So all honesty, though, Doc, we're giving you our honest thoughts. We're not trying to jip you at all because at the end of the day, you're going to be a really good team. We're both going to be really good teams. There's a lot of really good competition in this league, and I'm excited to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, my advice would be trade me one of your quarterbacks because as I talked about, it's impossible for me to find a productive quarterback too in this league. And this is why. Like, AJ's team has Geno Smith, Doc's team has Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo. All the contending quarterbacks are on contending teams. So it's hard for me to pick up a quarterback too for that team. But like Danny said, in all seriousness, you're probably just going out and trying to win. The one thing I will say about this 2025 first trade is that I would have rather gotten 2 more stable assets than 4 not stable assets. If you could have gotten, and again, we know this league market because we're in it and we know that everybody values picks highly. I think I would have gone after 2, like a wide receiver 2 and an RB2 rather than like, a couple RB3s and 4s and then a tight end 2 kind of thing. So I probably would have went after a more stable asset, but sometimes, you can't be, very choosy when you're looking for depth there. So I don't mind the trade there as well. I would say, just try and go and win. I mean, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
My team, I think, is personally better than this team. And I think Danny's team is probably better as well. And I actually think AJ's team is better. So even though you were a co-champion last year, I would put your team as the 4th best team in the league, just knowing what I know about the teams. But I mean, you have Kelsey, who's obviously the best tight end in fantasy.
Yeah.
He's going to be a huge advantage for you. Diggs, Lamb, Cooper, all those guys are going to be very productive. And if Derrick Henry can pump out one more very productive season, you're going to be in a good spot. So, like I said, just continue to kind of build this thing out, make some trades where you can, and continue to go for this. I will say, whoever got that 2025 first, that could be a high pick though, because by the time we get to 2025, Henry, Kelsey, those guys could all be like retired.
Hey, if you want to trade me CeeDee Lamb, by the way, like that will also do.
Yes, of course. Bryan Harris, I believe he's also in this league, but this is not the team from this league.
He was in our redraft league.
This is our redraft. Okay, so this is our listener league team. No, which team?
Yeah, no. He was in our listener redraft league, but this is like he's not in the dynasty league.
Okay, all right. So 12 team, start 9, 1 quarterback, super flex league. Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson as his top 2 guys. Bijan Robinson, Travis Etienne, J.K. Dobbins, James Cook, Devon A-Chain at the 202 there is pretty good value. DK Metcalf, Brandon Ayuk, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, Deontay Johnson, Rashad Bateman, Michael Gallup, Jaden Reed. Very strong at pretty much every position here. TJ Hawkinson, Dolchich, and Okonkwo, also a very solid tight end core. He has where he spent all of his picks, as you guys can see, listed there as well. Also has a couple extra 3s in 2024. So, I mean, at face value, I look at this team. Unfortunately, Kyler Murray is not going to be on the field right away. But this is the type of team I would probably make a move to try and secure myself a stud quarterback at least in the meantime. Kirk Cousins is the like prototype. If you have Kyler Murray in a competitive window, go trade for Kirk Cousins or go trade for, Geno Smith or go trade for Jared Goff. Or if you want to get a little bit cheaper, go trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, Ryan Tannehill, somebody like that, or Matthew Stafford. So for me, that would be my first order of business, is probably going to trade for somebody, especially knowing you have a couple extra 3s. You might be able to send 2/3 for Ryan Tannehill and he'll get you by as your quarterback 2 for the time being. Or you could go a little bit bigger and trade your, projected mid first or mid to late first, I would probably say, for Kirk Cousins and maybe another depth piece.
Yeah, or maybe if you're waiting till like the start of the season happens when you have more clarity and Matthew Stafford's a guy that's available, I think that would make a smart move as well. But like Corey said, I think you did a very, very good job at structuring this team. Still having those first-round picks at display if you need to spend them. Hence, we're talking about Kirk Cousins. If it takes 2024 first and second for Kirk Cousins and maybe another piece, whether
like Mike Evans is on his team or something like that too. I think one more productive wide receiver would also really help you. If you grabbed a Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, somebody like that would also make some sense. So if the manager with Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, whatever quarterback we kind of mentioned so far, also has one of those wide receivers and maybe he's looking to gear towards a rebuild, that would make a ton of sense there. He does have some trades listed here of some moves that he made. He was able to trade up to the 108 where he selected Jordan Addison, who looks like was sliding at that point in time because he's our 107. And all he had to give up was the 201 and 206. That was a great move. That person probably ended up with like Zach Charbonnet and, Roshan Johnson or something like that. I would much rather have Jordan Addison than either of those 2 assets combined. And then it looks like before the rookie draft, before the NFL draft, he traded away Elijah Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson, so a little mini wide receiver core there, and the 208, and he received DK Metcalf, which obviously is a little more of a stable asset. So I think that was a great move. And he also said the 2024 first and second are not his also, which is worth noting. So they're not his first and second. So he has them listed there as mid, but they could end up high or could end up lower. So that's definitely worth noting. Maybe if they're not your own first, you could get a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins to fill in for Kyler Murray and fill out your core.
Yep. No, I agree there. Obviously, like we kind of mentioned, like these are 2 absolute money moves. And like you kind of said, just look into the veteran quarterback market, your Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Geno Smith.
You might be able to get to Daniel Jones or Tua with a mid first, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, if you offered it straight up, yeah, probably. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, with ETN, with Cook, with J.K. Dobbins, he says, those guys could develop. I honestly believe in ETN and Dobbins to be productive this year. And, of course, Bijan's going to be a top guy as well. So, I think this team is closer to competing than it is for, like, house money or something like that. You kind of just need maybe one more productive wide receiver, a little bit more production at quarterback in the meantime for Kyler Murray. But I mean, you do have Colt McCoy too. So at the worst case scenario, you could also just throw Colt McCoy out there in your super flex spot for the time being.
He's also got a dangleable tight end. So hypothetically, if you added a tiny piece to a Okonkwo or Dulcich, you should be able to get a nice wide receiver or a nice quarterback out of it. So that'd be my advice. If you can do that, let's just say hypothetically, the guy who has Kirk Cousins is extremely high on Okonkwo. He basically has a Stan cult following, it seems like, on Twitter. If you can somehow flip Okonkwo in that second round pick for Kirk Cousins or someone like that, and keep that first round pick for buying power in season, I think that would be your best approach.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I also wouldn't be opposed to buying, like, I mean, I might keep saying it was like Jacobs, Stevenson, Damian Pierce, if they're also on the Kirk Cousins team and it costs you year 1 and year 2 to get Jacobs and Kirk Cousins, then that would also make a ton of sense as well. I mean, he said he feels like it's a 1 or 2 moves away from being a top contender. I definitely agree with that assessment. I think you're on the right track there. So we can move on to Travis's team here, a 12-team half tight end premium super flex league, start 10. Justin Herbert, Daniel Jones, Bryce Young, pretty solid quarterback core there. Christian McCaffrey, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Elijah Mitchell, Jerick McKinnon, etc. Tank Bigsby as well. CeeDee Lamb, Jordan Addison, Christian Watson, Treylon Burks, Mike Williams, Rashad Bateman, Josh Downs, David Njoku, Michael Mayers as tight ends. Doesn't have his 1 or his 2 in 2024, but he does have his 1 in 2025, but he's missing his mid-round picks. So I would say looking at this team, you're probably in a competitive window just by the looks of it, right? You got no first next year. That's pretty much a dead giveaway that you're in a competitive window, as is having Christian McCaffrey on your roster. So for me, I mean, I think your quarterback core is good enough to win. I think your wide receiver core is young and a little bit shaky. So I might be making a move with one of those young wide receivers to get a competitive wide receiver. And Treylon Burks is the perfect one, in my opinion, to trade off of, because he's a good, rebuilding asset for a rebuilding team. So if somebody has Deebo Samuel on their team or something like that, and you could give them Treylon Burks, and I'd even be willing to add like a 3rd round pick or another piece or something like that to get yourself Deebo Samuel, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Ayuk, somebody in that territory of wide receiver rankings, I would explore a move like that. And as much as I love Jordan Addison, if you can get a competitive wide receiver for him straight up or something comparable, Diggs, Adams, Cup, whatever, if it's Addison in a 3rd for one of those guys, I'd be okay doing that as well.
Question. So we mentioned like the tier up from Addison. So you're talking about your Diggs, your Cup, your Adams, guys like that. And obviously if you can get any higher than that, that would be a slam dunk. But would you consider in this scenario, because you know that this team is looking to score a ton of fantasy points, would you be willing to do Jordan Addison for like Calvin Ridley in a 2? Because that's something I would do too.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin Ridley's also a good target with Burks too. I'd rather have Ridley straight up than Treylon Burks with this team. I don't think that's a terrible one either. Chris Godwin also makes some sense in that area of the draft as well. There's a lot of guys, depending on where Hopkins signs, he might vault himself all the way up to the mid-20s, and you can maybe get Hopkins on the Bills or the Chiefs or something like that.
Marquise Brown
for Burks straight up. Like, it's definitely possible as well. So that would be my main concern with this team. I think your running back core is ready to compete. I think your quarterback core is ready to compete. I think your tight end core is ready to compete. Your wide receiver core is really the only thing I would be looking to rework.
Well, the other thing I was thinking maybe too is with Treylon Burks, if you can get Marquise Brown and another vet receiver, like hypothetically, I don't know if this is realistic, but like Marquise Brown and Gabe Davis, or Marquise Brown and insert wide receiver 45. Yeah, Elijah Moore, Brandon Cook, something like that. You know what I mean? Like a 2-for-1 to help build your depth while still getting good point production out of it.
Yeah, I think given that this is a start 10, I'd probably be looking to upgrade to like a very solid startable guy, using Treylon Burks as the guy that I'd probably be using to do that. Maybe Watson as well. If somebody's super high in your league on either Watson or Addison, you might be able to get a productive guy for those guys. But either way, I mean, semantics aside, your team is probably ready to compete as it is. Like, you probably don't really have to do anything and you'd probably be ready to compete. But given that you have McCaffrey and not your own 1st round pick, I'd be more willing to kind of shove a little bit further than what you have right now. Because if you didn't have McCaffrey and Aaron Jones and the rest of your team looked as is and you had your 1st round pick, I would say this is a house money team. Yeah. But because you have McCaffrey and Aaron Jones and no 1st round pick, you kind of have to push your chips in a little bit. So he also has some trades listed here where he made a couple days ago, he traded away a late 2nd and an early 4th for Rashad Bateman. I think that was a pretty decent move there. Good value on him. Traded away Jahan Dotson and Damian Harris for DeAndre Swift and Mike Williams. I personally would take Dotson and Damian Harris. I think Damian Harris and DeAndre Swift are going to be a lot closer from a redraft perspective than Dotson and Mike Williams would be from like a dynasty value perspective.
I will say though, because we've mentioned that he's in a competitive window, I actually don't mind this move because I do think that I prefer DeAndre Swift, obviously long term to Damon Harris, both in terms of redraft and in dynasty. So I would prefer DeAndre Swift. And although I would prefer Jahan Dotson, and the difference between Jahan Dotson and Mike Williams is bigger than the difference between DeAndre Swift and Damon Harris for me, I do think from a production size standpoint, Mike Williams is going to be a top 24 type of wide receiver in terms of point per game. And that offense is going to throw over 700 times. And while I love Jahan Dotson and do prefer him straight up in Dynasty, I do think getting that slight upgrade at running back, and while you're downgrading a little bit more at wide receiver, the fact that he gives you more production this year fits your team build to a point where I'm fine with the move. And then finally, this last deal, I don't really think we need to spend much time. I think you straight up absolutely took this guy to the woodshed. I understand, Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman, the second round pick, like they're good, building block pieces to add to a nucleus. But that doesn't mean that should be able to net you a nucleus piece himself with CD Lamb. You end up getting CD Lamb. I don't even know how you got this guy to throw in an extra third round pick, but the fact that you got CD Lamb and a third round pick for Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman in the second, I'm taking your side any day of the week. But overall, good job. I think you can definitely compete with this team. Like you kind of mentioned, not having that first, you basically have to. So just make some diligent moves and keep up with the process, and we can move on to the next team. And that's going to be from Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan's team here, a 12-team PPR half tight end premium super flex league. Lamar Jackson, Kenny Pickett, Jacoby Brissett, a couple other guys there at quarterback, Saquon Barkley, Tyler Algier, Pacheco, and some other dudes there. Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, George Pickens, Kadarius Toney, Darnell Mooney, and some other guys at wide receiver. Pat Freiermuth is his main tight end. Looks like he has not had his rookie draft yet because he does ask, what should I do with my 2023 picks? So he has the 104, he has the 112, 204, 308, 404, 503, 504, whatever. Those picks 308 and beyond, just take the best player available, take your guys, whatever. 104, 112, and 204 are the ones that matter. He also does have 4 ones next year and an extra second and third. And so I mean, he has a lot of draft capital to go along with like a pretty solid team, I would say. So what are your thoughts on this team? Do you think because he has all those ones next year, are you inclined to like sell off a guy like Saquon Barkley? Or are you inclined to do the opposite and potentially, spend your picks this year at 104? You're looking at, in a super flex league, you're looking at one of those quarterbacks potentially, which is probably the direction I would go in, considering Lamar and Kenny Pickett are the only guys that you really have there. You should be able to get CJ Stroud with that pick. Maybe Bryce Young or Richardson falls to you. And then at 112, you could potentially go with a Zach Charbonnet or somebody like that to help fill out your running back core, and then maybe go shopping if you wanted to with one of your first next year.
Well, where I would recommend here is, like you kind of mentioned, what should I do with Barkley? Anytime I get that question, and I'm in a state where, again, I think this is a house money type of team. I don't think you're a top contender, but I don't think you're a bottom feeder. What should I do with Saquon Barkley? My answer is always defer to what the market is basically telling you. And right now, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Adams, about equivalent value in my opinion, in terms of where they go in startups, both around, mid 4th round type of picks. And seeing that you were able to get, I know this was in July 2022, so you're probably not going to get this type of return, but if you can get anywhere close to what you dealt Devontae Adams for, 110, 24 first, and Michael Gallup, obviously you take that. Now, let's just say hypothetically that's more so closer to the Ramondre Stevenson deal, only it's a mid-projected 2024 first and a mid-projected 2024 second. While I think it's close, I would actually prefer to do that simply because I want to add a quarterback to this team before I'm ready to compete. And then by next year, that pick might end up materializing to a Raheem Sanders, Trayvon Henderson, who is going to be a similar value to Saquon Barkley going into next year's rookie draft cycle. So if that's the case, and I'm just parlaying my competing window an extra year, making sure I secure my quarterback and also getting a younger running back that fits my timeline, I think that's a beneficial move for you. So I personally would look to see what you can get for Saquon. And again, if it's anywhere close to like a 2024 1 and 2, I would probably take it.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe the person they're willing to give you almost 2 firsts, and you have to throw in Pacheco also to get 2 firsts out of them for Saquon and Pacheco. Then that would also make a ton of sense as well. Yeah, I think given where your team is at, you'd probably have to do a lot of moves to get to the point that you'd be ready to compete, especially if you're adding CJ Stroud at 104, who's probably not going to be the most productive guy early on in his career. It's probably going to take him a year or two to get that production out of him. So for me, I would not force it. I think it's very tempting to take Jahmyr Gibbs with that 104 and just go, and try and compete with this team. But I think you're lacking some depth. I think you're lacking some high-end talent. So what I would do is see what you can get for Saquon Barkley. And if it's a lot, then definitely deal him. and then spend your pick 104 CJ Stroud, 112 Zach Charbonnet, whoever is there at 112, maybe even Will Levis if he falls to that point. And then later on, you can fill out your running back core with all the first round capital and the second round capital that you have next year.
Do you look to explore the cost difference between moving up from the 104 to the 102-3? With this
Yeah,
year?
I think if it's not a ton of
Like the
cost for
204?
you, yeah, if it's the 204, I'd be willing to do it. Even if you had to give up one of your 2024 seconds as well,
Yeah,
I don't think that's a bad trade. I personally have made that trade in rookie drafts
same.
this year. I traded up from 104 in one league to 102 and got Bryce Young. Or was it one? I don't even remember. I think I traded from Stroud to Young with a 2024 second. It might have just been from 104 to 103. But either way, I think if that's all it costs you, I'm willing to make a move like that. But I mean, this team's pretty simple to me. Just spend your picks, get some young players, offload Saquon Barkley if you can, offload maybe even DJ Moore if you can. Maybe that's a mid-season type move if the Bears are throwing the ball all over the place, because DJ Moore is going to be like 27 years old, so he might not quite fit your timeline. And then spend all your picks in 2024 and be ready at least as a house money contender by then.
Yep. No, I agree with you there. I think you pretty much summed it up. Overall, you're in a good shell. We explained what to do with the picks and look to try and compete by this time next year. But I think we can move on to the next team, sixth team of the video, and that's going to be from Panya. I'll let you take it away with this team.
Yeah, you guys can see his team on the screen there. It's same scoring format, 12-team, super flex, half tight end premium as well. Kyler Murray, Bryce Young, Kenny Pickett, and Will Levis pretty strong at quarterback there. Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall head out the running back core with Brian Robinson there in reserve. CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk, and Treylon Burks, and Quentin Johnston. So, I mean, you go like 7 deep of top 25, top 30 dynasty wide receivers. Not much going on at tight end with Irv Smith, Jake Ferguson, Luke Musgrave. But it looks like he spent all his rookie picks this year and still has an extra 1 and an extra 2 in next year's class. My thoughts on this team is that, I mean, I'm probably earmarking this for house money just because you have Kyler Murray, you have a running back coming off of an ACL tear, and your other running backs are rookie. Even though Bijan's going to be great, who knows? There could be some stuff that goes wrong, and you don't really have a tight end of note on this roster as well. You could definitely get there and maybe go out and, maybe get by with Bryce Young and Kenny Pickett early on, or go out and buy a Kirk Cousins if you wanted to. But for me, I think it's probably just safer to let this thing develop. And if Bryce Young looks like the next Deshaun Watson and Kenny Pickett's having a breakout season, maybe you can compete as soon as next year once Kyler Murray gets back on the field. And then you could kind of use that extra first that you have, your own first, your own second, whatever, as buying power for whatever you need. Another running back, another quarterback, a tight end, whatever the case is. So for me, I think I would just probably look to spend my picks next year and see what happens this year. Hopefully you can add Brock Bowers to this team. That would give you another stud, option at tight end in next year's class. And I'm assuming with 2 1s, you should be able to secure him. Very well-built team.
Yeah, no, this team is extremely well built, and you see why through some of the trades you're able to make. Let's just combine these 2 trades together, because I do think that if you combine these 2 trades together, you get a better sense of what's kind of going on here, right? So you're able, in terms of the net of these 2 trades, end up receiving Kyler Murray, the 104, and Breece Hall in exchange for Deshaun Watson, the 103, the 203, and the 206. So if we're simplifying this down, while I do prefer Deshaun to Kyler slightly and the 103 to the 104 slightly, the difference between those offsets versus Breece Hall for the 203 and the 206 is massive. So basically the way I look at this is you replace one elite quarterback with another elite quarterback. You move down 1 spot from the 103 to the 104, where you still get Bryce Young, who is my 102, and you end up getting a free Breece Hall basically for a 203 and a 206. Overall, I just think that this is fantastic asset management, and you basically got yourself, I wouldn't say free, because 203 and 206 is still like, a couple picks, but relative to cost, a free Breece Hall on this trade.
Yeah, and I think you kind of made the decision for yourself. When you went after Kyler Murray and Breece Hall, you kind of determined that you're probably not going to compete quite this year, but come 2024, you're probably going to be the best team in your league. Once Kyler's back on the field, whether he's with the Cardinals or not, he's going to be great. And same goes with Breece Hall. Once he's, 2 years removed from the post ACL tear, and he'll probably be good midseason next year. So, like I said, it's possible that you get to the week 7 mark with this team and you're 5-2, and Kyler's back on the field and Breece looks like himself. You could definitely make some moves at that point in time. You also traded away Jalen Waddle 205 and 401 for CeeDee Lamb in a mid-second. I don't know how you got the guy to throw in a second on this deal. I probably
Yeah, 'cause
thought it was probably about fair. Jalen Waddle in a 2 for CeeDee Lamb sounds about right for me, but the fact that he also threw in a second next year is a great move. So he said he also has other trades here. He traded the 106 for a 2024 first and the 205. He said in hindsight the Brees trade was the most suspect move I made. I don't think so. I think you definitely
yeah.
ended up net, like Danny said, you netted very well between those two trades. So I think if you look at them in tandem, it definitely works itself out. And then he said a little bit of panic having a strong young team and willing to fill gaps on the roster, and also concerns with Deshaun mounting a comeback this year. He said, how do you think he's handled his QB room? I mean,
Perfectly.
I think you did a good job. I mean, like you said, Watson and Murray, there's really no difference. So all you did was really move down from 103 to 104, get the guy that we have ranked 102, and net yourself Brees Hall for 2 seconds. So for me, I think you handled it really well. On face value, I think it's a little bit of a sketchy move, and I wouldn't recommend doing what you did, but it worked out for you in the long run. And he said, wondering what he should do this year. He feels like a year out from contending again. Very good assessment. It's pretty clear to me that you know what you're doing because you built a great team and you also are not panicking and wanting to shove your chips in year too early. So I would say, I mean, your plan should be, I mean, he also says, should I get rid of pieces like DJ Moore and Ayuk? I mean, if they're having breakout seasons and you're not really, the team around them is not really performing that well, then by all means shop them, but they're young enough that it shouldn't matter. You're going to be competitive next year.
Yep. No, I agree with you there. Overall, great work. Yeah, just take it by ear. And I think the way you've built this team is you've given yourself a lot of flexibility to make moves depending on what's happening. And I do think, like Corey kind of said, we're assuming right now that Kyler Murray and Brees Hall are going to get off the slow starts. But hypothetically, even if they do get off the slow starts, if you're able to weather the storm, let's just say in your first 3 weeks, 2 of the teams you play are like the bottom 3 teams in your league, and you end up going into week 4 and you're at a 2-1 record when Kyler Murray's fully getting under speed, when Brees Hall's fully getting under speed, then yeah, I do see a scenario where you could potentially compete. Obviously, a lot also rings on the fact that we're putting the assumption right now that Irv Smith is the Bengals tight end one, because if he is in that role, he could have a Hayden Hurst-esque role where while he's not this consistent tight end option, he's still a highly volatile, high upside tight end target in a very, very good offense. So I do see the upside path to your team potentially surprising you and competing before you expect. But overall, I would go into it with the assumption that this is house money.
Yeah, especially because you are pretty shallow at running back as well. Yep. Plus, like you said, you have Irv Smith as your starting tight end. You could go shopping if your team is, like I said, like 5-2 at week 7. Go out and get yourself like, a tight end like Pat Freiermuth or maybe Hawkinson or somebody's having like down stretches, using one of your 1s and 2s or something like that. You could definitely make some moves, but overall, I think you're just in a good spot. You have a lot of flexibility. You can kind of just be patient with this thing. But we can move on to the next team here, which is from Daniel Krauss. 10-team, full PPR, no tight end premium, super flex league. Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson as his main quarterbacks. I have like 7 dynasty teams with that quarterback core. Brees Hall as his main running back. AJ Brown, Treylon Burks, Elijah Moore, Jamison Williams, Kadarius Toney as his wide receivers. Kyle Pitts, David Njoku, Cole Kmet as his main tight ends. Has not had his rookie draft yet by the looks of it because he has the 101 and 103 listed in a 10-team super flex league. We got to assume he's going to be adding Bijan Robinson to this team and also probably a quarterback there at the 103 to go along with his other guys. In your situation, I would absolutely want Anthony Richardson to fall to me at 103 because you don't need the quarterback to start right away because you already have Herbert and Watson. So let's just say he adds Bijan Robinson and Anthony Richardson to this team. How are we feeling about his chances to compete? And, what about, how are we feeling about the value of his team as well?
Well, for starters, I doubt that he's going to get Anthony Richardson at 3 because he says in the comment, I know A Rich is going 102, so I can get Young. So we already know inherently here that the 103 here is going to be Bryce Young. So that's the only basically spot to point out here. Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson, Bryce Young is the main quarterbacks, and obviously you're adding Bijan and Brees Hall as the main running backs here. So looking at that, obviously I think you're in a house money situation simply due to the lack of wide receiver depth, but you do have 3 ones where, again, if you see very, very strong signs of your team competing right away, I do think if you want to dangle one of those ones to go get a veteran wide receiver, you want to dangle a couple of those ones and see if you maybe get 3 guys hypothetically. Like, let's just say if this guy's blowing it up mid-season and he's dangling around, Deebo Samuel, Calvin Ridley, and I don't know, Chris Godwin or Keenan Allen or someone like that, and you want to buy that with the late and the regular projected one, obviously don't move the early one, then I would be willing to do that for sure.
Yeah, you have a lot of flexibility with this team. I would probably head into this year with the house money expectation because,
Yep.
Brees, similar to the last team we talked about, Bijan and Brees is a great long-term running back core. This year might not necessarily get out to a flying start. So, and especially knowing it's a 10-team league too. So I'm assuming you're probably like the 5th or 6th best team in your league as it currently stands. But if you go into 2024 with those picks, you get yourself an early one, you get yourself a mid one, a late one, you can fill out your running back core a little bit more. You'll already have your quarterbacks locked down. So if you have the Caleb Williams pick, because you have one listed there as earlier, the Drake May pick, you could even move down from that pick up some extra capital, sell one of your quarterbacks. You have a lot of flexibility. The goal with house money rebuilding in general is to collect assets. So because you're not trying to compete this year, most likely, if you're on, if it's mid-season and that late first that you have looks like it's going to absolutely be late, and somebody's having a down stretch of time, somebody's injured, whatever, at wide receiver. Let's say Drake London's injured and he wasn't performing that well when he started at the beginning of the season. You could go buy Drake London mid-season for a late first, because that's how in-season mindset works sometimes. Some people are just so, short-sighted, and they see a guy injured and not performing, and they'll be willing to sell him for a late first like that. So that's the types of moves that I would be looking to do, and most likely you won't get those opportunities until the season starts.
Yep. No, I basically agree with what you kind of said there. I just think, the other thing that I will say that's a variable that is affecting this team more so than just a generic league is that it is a 3 running back start league. So although you have Bijan and Brees, that's a nice stepping point to have. Outside of that, I would be very cautious relying upon, Deion Jackson, Naeem Hines, Samaje Perine. So while I do personally, if this was a 2 running back start league, would want to compete right away, I would throw caution there that if you do try to, this is a league that you do need more running back depth than typical.
Yeah, and if you spend those 2024 picks next year and your team looks like it's going to be one of the best in the league, thankfully you have the luxury of a bunch of mid-round picks in 2025 that you could use as buying power to get some running back depth, get more wide receiver depth, whatever, because you have an extra second round or an extra couple thirds as well. So that would also be a move for next year. Like if you could add some pieces to this team and it's ready to compete come 2024, maybe you go out and you buy AJ Dillon or something for like a late third, mid third rounder or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree there. Other point I want to have is you need to convince your league to make this a 3 flex league and move the running backs and wide receivers to 2 running backs and 3 wide receivers. Because I don't know, just aesthetically looking at 3 running back, 4 wide receiver start just kind of pains me. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it is. It's a really weird format. Usually it's just 2 running backs, 3. I think every league I play it is like 2 running backs, 3 wide receiver, and 2 or 3 flexes. So to me, it's just odd that it's a 4th position. But hey, sometimes you don't get to choose your league scoring format and positional formats. So the final team in the video is from Tyler here. He has his team listed a 16-team start 12. So 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 5 flex spot, and it is a super flex league for 16-teamer. The good news is you have Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, and Trey Lance, which I'd imagine is probably the best quarterback core in your league in a 16-teamer. The bad news is that you have literally nobody else like on this team, pretty much. You have Devontae Smith, Drake London, DeAndre Swift, and Rashad Bateman. The rest of your team is like fodder, pretty much. And you have the 107 this year, so you'd probably add like an Addison or something like that. The 214, which is basically a mid third round pick, pretty much, in a 16-teamer, and then the 301 also like a late third round pick. So you're at a spot where I don't usually recommend selling elite quarterbacks, but you kind of don't have another choice. Like, I don't know how far, like you're very far from contending, and he recognizes that. He's like, I'm clearly far from competing. He doesn't have much depth. Should have realized that at the startup draft. I'm assuming the way that you handled the startup was like you saw Watson slipping and you traded up and gave up a bunch of mid startup picks. Maybe you saw London slipping or Smith slipping as well. And you traded your mid round picks for, elite assets, which is typically a good investment.
In a 12-team league,
this format, you got to kind of know what your league format is, right? 5 flexes, super flex 16-teamer. As great as it is having Watson and Lamar Jackson and Lance and all these guys, it's pretty difficult to give up depth. And not only that, but I'd imagine it's going to be hard to trade them now too, because a lot of people are not going to have a bunch of assets to just throw around for quarterbacks, because they're not going to want to give up a bunch of stuff for one player when this is the scoring format of the league.
Yeah, you got yourself in a little bit of a tricky bind here. I'm not gonna lie. It's tough, man. Like, and again, like I will have a little bit of a caveat here that a 16 team start 12 Superflex league exists, because I can only imagine what some of the starting lineups are going to look in season when frickin' Ronald Jones is a team's RB2 and fucking,
Chris Moore is their wide receiver 4 in their
dude, and they're
flex
throwing
spot.
Trey Palmer to the Superflex at times. Like, I already know what's going to be going on in this league, especially when it hits bye weeks. It's going to be pretty fucking bleak. So, but ultimately, it's going to be tough too, because while you want to just say easily, well, we're just going to strip the quarterback, strip all the production, just get a bunch of picks, it's also a 16-team draft. So you don't know exactly what you're going to get with those picks. Could it be the 203 equivalent, or could it be the 106 equivalent? You never know what you're going to get. So it is tough here. This is a definitely a more difficult spot than as if it was a 12-team start super flex, start 11 type of league. Then from there, you can pretty much, realize, hey, I don't have any depth. I can just sell off all my elite assets. People are more willing to buy elite assets as soon as they don't become, what's the term? As soon as you don't have to throw in, 12 fucking people in the lineup in a 16-team league. I don't know what else to say. It's a tough situation. You just kind of got to keep your head down, trust the process, and hope you can retool this thing from the start up.
Yeah, but like the tough thing is like the way we value Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson's like, I want at least 3 1s for those guys.
Yeah.
But like, who's going to give you 3 1s? And like you said, those 3 1s also, like if they're late, like they could be equivalent to like the 202. Like they're not going to necessarily be, a chance of being mid or a chance of being early or whatever. So yeah, you're in a brutal spot if I'm being honest right now. So for me, hopefully you can sell one of those quarterbacks for like 3 or 4 first rounders, because then you could finally start to build your team a little bit more. Yeah, this is a brutal spot. This is literally one of the more brutal spots I've seen because of the league scoring format. So I would say next time, make sure you really pay attention to the format of your league. The bright side is that you don't need to have a super dominant team to win this league, but you do need to have a good enough team. And probably the best team in this league will have a lot of depth, I would imagine. They're probably going to have, go 5 or 6 to 8 deep at wide receiver, couple deep, 4 deep at running back, have 2 starting quarterbacks, and, a solid tight end. And they'll probably win the league.
Question I have: do you have enough players to field a starting lineup right now? Because if I'm looking at it,
he lists like fodder, so I'm assuming there's a bunch of other guys that he just didn't list that aren't relevant at all.
But even just from like the noteworthy players, like Lamar, Watson, Swift, London, Smith, Bateman, Pierce, Gerald Everett, and then if we include Matt Breida, that's looking at 9 guys.
Yeah, well, and Lance would be in your super flex, so that's 10 guys. Or sorry, no, Watson would be in your super flex. Yeah, so no, this is a bad spot. Let's just put it that way. So try and make some moves if you can. I'd be looking to sell for capital if I can, but again, you got to be careful with that, because if you're selling to a high end contender, you're basically getting like the 204 from them for one of these first rounders. So don't envy your situation, but I would say continue to make some moves and feel free to reach out to us, because this one's probably going to be difficult.
It's going to be a project.
Really build. Yeah, it's going to be a project. It's going to be difficult. Aim for 2025 picks if you need to, and try and really punt this thing out. But that is the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe if you're new around here. We may be at 20,000 by the time you guys are watching this. We're like 15 away as we're recording this right now. If we're at 20,000, big shout out to you guys for getting us there. We started this channel like 3 years ago. We never thought we'd get to this point, or at least, we had some doubts that we'd get to this point when we were pulling in 10 views a video for the first year or whatever. But really appreciate all the support you guys have shown to us. Definitely couldn't have done it without you guys. Danny looks like he has something to say, so I'll let him do it.
Well, the other thing I'm going to say is, if you notice, you're watching this video and you notice that we've crossed 20K and you know that you were in the initial 20K that found out about us, comment it down below that you were part of the initial 20K that ended up watching FSC, because I know we have a ton of OGs out there that have basically been watching us since, like Corey mentioned, in those first 10 views when we were pulling in back in, May 2020.
Yeah, let us know what we were at when you guys subscribed too. Like I'd be curious to know, I subscribed when you guys were at 200 subscribers or something like that. I'd definitely be very interested. Shout out to those of you guys that have been around that long.
True OGs.
Yeah, true OGs. So for sure, if you guys enjoyed, like I said, like, comment, subscribe, check out our site. If you guys want access to Dynasty rankings, first priority to Dynasty decisions, every team that we covered in this video was a Mother Flocker tier member. So if you want your team covered ASAP, you have a rookie draft or whatever, you want to get ahead of your league mates, definitely go sign up over there. Promo code FSE is the only way that you can get access to priority Dynasty decisions episodes. So make sure to use our promo code, 30% off, 2-day free trial. 6 months for free if you sign up annually. That'll cover you through the rest of the Dynasty season, the redraft prep season, this in-season content that we're going to be talking about. And then again, all the way up until next year's rookie drafts that you'll be covered if you sign up annually, basically right now. So definitely check that out if you're interested. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.